The desert morning always began quietly, almost as if the land itself needed time to wake up. The sky opened slowly from a soft gray to a gentle gold, and the first warm light touched the tops of the distant mesas. Cole Hartley liked these early hours best. The air was cool, the world was calm, and no one expected anything from him yet. He stood outside the small bunkhouse on the ranch, stretching his large arms above his head. His shadow stretched across the sand like a tall tree. Him as always that he took up more space than most people were comfortable with. Cole was used to it. Since he was a boy, people had stared at him. They whispered comments like, "He's too big to be gentle," or "He must be trouble," but he never argued. He simply worked harder and stayed quiet. He had learned that silence was the safest thing he could offer the world. That morning, he saddled his horse and rode out to check the fence line on the far side of the ranch. A storm had blown through the night before, rare one that carried enough wind to knock down a few posts. Saturday repairs were never his favorite job, but it meant he could spend the day away from the noisy barn and the long list of chores the other hands argued about as he rode. The land opened wider and wider until the ranch house looked no bigger than a thumbnail in the distance. The desert stretched out beautifully dry grass waving like shallow water, and tall red cliffs standing firm in the background, and small birds hopping from one sagebrush to another. Cole felt peaceful here. Out in this quiet, he didn't feel too big. He felt like he belonged. He rode until he saw the broken section of fence. The wooden post had snapped clean in half, probably hit by lightning or blown down by the heavy winds. He slid off his horse, tied the reins loosely to a post, and began unloading the new planks and tools. The sun was climbing now, warming the dirt beneath his boots. After a few minutes, he heard footsteps soar what sounded like footsteps crunching softly somewhere behind him. He straightened, but didn't turn around yet. It could have been just another ranch hand, though none were assigned to this area. When he finally looked back, he saw a woman standing near a cluster of mesquite trees. She wasn't close enough to startle him, but she wasn't far either. She watched him with calm, steady eyes. Her long, dark hair fell freely over her shoulders, and she stood with the kind of quiet strength that reminded Cole of old trees that had weathered many storms. She wore a simple woven shawl, the kind made with traditional care, and held a basket in her hands. Cole lifted his hat respectfully. "Morning." The woman didn't speak right away. She seemed to be studying him the way someone studies weather carefully, trying to decide if it brought harm or comfort. Then she stepped a little closer, keeping her expression unreadable. "You're fixing the fence from last night's storm," she said. Her voice was soft, but confident. "Yes, ma'am," Cole replied. "Wind knocked down a part of it." She nodded. "My family's land is just over that ridge." She pointed toward the west. "Sometimes the ranch cattle wander through. The fence helps keep things peaceful." Cole felt a little embarrassed. He knew some local families preferred the ranch to keep its animals clearly separated, and he had worked hard to keep it that way. "I'll have it fixed by noon," he said. He expected the woman to leave then, but she didn't. She took a slow step forward, still keeping some distance, and tilted her head as if trying to read something deeper in his face. "You're new to this side of the ranch," she said. "I shift around based on what needs doing," he answered. "Name's Cole." She hesitated before replying. "I am Ayanna." The name felt warm on the air, like something shaped by the land itself. Cole repeated it softly in his mind so he wouldn't forget. Ayanna looked at the broken post again. "Do you need help?" Her offer surprised him. Most people didn't approach him so freely, and fewer offered help. He shook his head kindly. "Thank you, but I've got it. Just needs a fresh post and some wire." She didn't take offense. She simply nodded and watched him work for a moment longer. Cole wasn't used to being observed. His movements became slower, more careful, so he didn't want to look clumsy in front of her. "You're strong," she said, not as a compliment, but as an observation. Cole paused. He had heard those words before, but not like this. People usually said it with either admiration or unease. Ayanna said it simply, like stating that the sky was blue or the cliff was tall. "I managed," she said, trying not to make much of it. "A small knowing smile touched her lips. Strength is meant to protect, not frighten. Cole blinked, unsure how she knew that was exactly what he had spent his whole life trying to prove. Before he could respond, she shifted the basket in her hands. I came to gather desert tea leaves, she explained. The storm brought down some branches, so the leaves are fresher today. Cole nodded politely, unsure what to say. Social conversation had never been his strength. He was used to simple exchanges about weather, cattle, hay, and chores, not speaking with women who carried themselves like they understood the world in a way he didn't. Ayanna seemed to sense his quiet nature. Instead of pressing the conversation, she stepped away and began collecting small leaves from the shrubs nearby. She moved gracefully, without hurry, as if she trusted the day to unfold on its own. Cole returned to his work, though he found himself glancing her way now and then. Something about her made the desert seem fuller, less empty. She belonged here, as naturally as sunlight or the sound of distant birds. After a while, Ayanna approached again, carrying her filled basket. Will you be repairing more fences today? Probably, he said. Storm left a mess around the north corner. Might be riding over there later. She nodded slowly, then looked him directly in the eyes, something few people ever did without hesitation. Storms take what they want, she said softly, but they also show what needs strengthening. For a moment, Cole wasn't sure if she was talking about fences or something else entirely, before he could wonder too much. She started to walk away. She moved with the calm of someone who didn't fear silence. When she reached the shade of the mesquite trees again, she looked back just once. Good day. Cole. Good day, Ayanna, he replied, and she disappeared behind the bushes. Cole returned to tightening the new fence wire. But his mind wasn't fully on his work anymore. Meeting her had stirred something he couldn't quite name. Curiosity, perhaps, or recognition. She carried a presence that stayed in the air even after she was gone. By noon, the fence was repaired, and Cole rode back toward the ranch for lunch. But he didn't go straight to the bunkhouse. Instead, he stopped at the ridge she had pointed to earlier. He could see a small cluster of homes in the distance, quiet, simple, in harmony with the land. Smoke curled gently from one chimney. It must have been her family's place. He felt an unexpected pull toward that direction, though he didn't allow himself to think too much about it. He had never been the type to push himself into someone else's world, especially when he wasn't invited. Still, he couldn't deny the strange warmth he felt remembering her voice and the calm way she had looked at him, as if she saw more than just his size. When he finally returned to the barn, the other ranch hands were chatting loudly about weekend plans. Cole didn't join them. He gave a friendly nod, hung his hat on its hook, and walked to the water trough to cool his hands and face. The cold water helped, but his thoughts drifted back to the woman in the desert again. Who was she really? What had brought her out gathering leaves alone after the storm? And why had her words lingered in him longer than the morning sunlight? He didn't know. But he hoped, without wanting to admit it, he might see her again. That evening, after chores were done and the sky turned shades of orange and lavender, Cole sat outside with a cup of coffee. The ranch grew quiet as the day slipped away. Coyotes yipped somewhere far off, and a breeze rustled through the cottonwoods. He thought about Ayanna's calm eyes and the gentle certainty in her voice. Most people looked at him with caution or curiosity, as if they were trying to figure out whether he was a threat or a tool. But she had looked at him as though he were simply a person, not too much, not too little, for someone like Cole, who had spent his life apologizing for the space he occupied. That simple kindness felt like a small miracle. He didn't say anything out loud, he rarely did, but inside his chest, something quiet and hopeful flickered. He had no idea how their paths might cross again, or if they even would. But he knew one thing for certain. The desert felt different now, not bigger. Not smaller, just somehow alive in a new way. And he couldn't help wondering if Ayanna felt it too. The next few days moved quietly on the ranch, but Cole found his thoughts returning to Ayanna more often than he liked to admit. He tried to stay focused on work repairing the hay shed roof, guiding the younger ranch hands, and moving cattle to the south pasture, but every now and then the memory of her calm eyes and soft voice slipped into his mind. He didn't fully understand why. He had met plenty of people in his life, but something about her had settled into his thoughts like a seed waiting for the right moment to grow. On Wednesday afternoon, he rode out near the ridge again, checking the water troughs. The desert air was warm, and a light breeze kept the heat from feeling heavy. Cole didn't expect to see her again, yet a small part of him hoped he would. He tried not to look around too obviously. He didn't want to seem like he was searching for something, or someone he had just finished, tightening a loose valve when he heard footsteps on the gravel behind him. For a moment he thought he imagined it, but when he turned, she was there standing a few yards away with the same peaceful expression, as if she had simply stepped out of the desert wind. "Hello again," she said, her voice carrying gently across the warm air. Cole lifted his hat slightly in greeting. "Hello, Ayanna." She stepped closer, but not too close, as if she always gave people space to be comfortable. "You ride this way often," she said simply. "Only when there's work to be done," he replied, feeling a strange need to explain himself. "Didn't plan on being over this way 2 days in a row." Her lips curved into a small, unreadable smile. "The land brings people together when it wishes." Cole didn't know what that meant exactly, but the words felt soft, almost comforting. He wiped his hands on his jeans and cleared his throat. Conversations were never easy for him. He always worried he might say something awkward or too blunt. "Are you, collecting leaves again?" he asked. Ayanna shook her head. "Not today. I came to check on the plants near the wash. The storm left some roots exposed." He nodded, though he didn't really know much about desert plants beyond the ones that his horse avoided. Still, he didn't want the conversation to end. It had been a long time since talking to someone felt easy. She looked at the water trough he had been working on. "You take good care of this land." "I try," he said softly. "My mother always said people show their heart in the way they treat the land," Ayanna replied. "Some take only what they want. Others care for it as if it were alive." Cole paused, unsure whether she was paying him a compliment or just sharing wisdom. Either way, warmth touched his chest, spreading slowly. He leaned against the fence, careful to keep his posture relaxed so he didn't look too large or intimidating. "I'm just doing my job." "That may be true," she said, "but the way you do it is different." Different. Cole wasn't sure how to feel about that word. It had followed him throughout his life. Sometimes it stung. Sometimes it confused him. From her mouth, though, it felt gentle, not sharp. Ayanna studied him for a moment, her expression thoughtful. "People in town talk about you." The statement sent a tiny knot into Cole's stomach. "They talk about a lot of things. They say you are strong," she said, tilting her head slightly. "But they say it as if they don't understand the meaning of strength." Cole looked down at the ground, nudging a pebble with his boot. "People see what they want to see. I quit trying to change that a long time ago." Ayanna didn't respond right away. Finally, she said, "Sometimes people misunderstand what they fear. Sometimes they misunderstand what they admire. Either way, misunderstanding is not your burden to carry." Cole lifted his eyes to her, surprised. He had never heard someone describe his life in such simple truth. Most people just told him to ignore what others say. That had never helped. But Ayanna's words felt different. Like she understood something deeper. She walked toward a patch of small desert shrubs and knelt to examine the leaves. Cole watched her quietly. She moved with purpose, gentle but confident. Like someone who trusted both herself and the earth beneath her feet. He took a slow step closer. "Everything all right with the plants?" She nodded. "They survived better than I expected. The desert teaches resilience." Cole hesitated for a moment, then asked, "You grew up here?" "Yes," she answered. "My family has lived on this land for many generations. I left for a few years to work in the city, but—" Her voice softened. "I came back." Cole waited, sensing there was more. Ayanna rarely spoke without reason. "It wasn't an easy return," she admitted. "Sometimes, when you leave home, you come back different. And people don't always know how to accept that." Cole understood that more than she knew. City life must be a big change. It was, she said. Her eyes drifted to the horizon. Noisy, crowded, fast. She lifted a few dry leaves from the ground and let them fall through her fingers. I wanted something quiet again, something that felt honest. Cole liked the way she spoke, gentle, thoughtful, without rushing. It reminded him of the desert wind that moved slowly but always carried meaning. She stood again, brushing sand from her hands. "And what about you, Cole? Have you always lived here?" He nodded. "Born not far from here. Been working on ranches since I was old enough to lift a hay bale." She studied him quietly. "Do you like it?" "Ranch work." He glanced out across the empty desert, where the land seemed to stretch forever. "It's peaceful. Simple in the right ways. Hard in others. But it's all I've ever known." "That doesn't mean it's all you can be," she said softly. Her words hit deeper than he expected. It felt as though she had seen straight through him to the quiet insecurities he never spoke about. For a moment he didn't know what to say. Ayanna didn't press him. She stepped closer to the fence and lightly traced her fingers along the wood, her movements slow and thoughtful. "People carry their own storms," she said. "Some are loud, some are silent. But they shape us all the same." Cole could feel something inside him shifting, like a door opening to a room he'd never dared to enter. He wasn't used to someone seeing him so clearly. Most conversations in his life had been shallow, surface level, safe. This was different. Talking to Ayanna felt like stepping into deeper water calm, but with meaning beneath the surface. Before he could gather a reply, a voice called out from the distance. Cole recognized it, one of the ranch hands riding out to check the trail. Ayanna stepped back a little, as if retreating to her own space. "I should go," she said quietly. Cole felt an unexpected rush of disappointment. "Will I see you again?" The question left his mouth before he could stop it. Ayanna looked at him thoughtfully, her expression softening. "The land decides," she said with a small smile. "But I think—" Yes, she turned and began walking toward the ridge, her shawl catching lightly in the breeze. Cole watched her until she disappeared behind the rise. When the ranch hand rode up, Cole tried to act normal, tried to push aside the warmth and confusion her presence had stirred. But his heart felt different, lighter somehow, yet unsettled. Later that evening, as he brushed down his horse and listened to the distant hum of crickets, he replayed their conversation. He remembered her words about storms, about strength, about being more than what others saw. They echoed in him long after dusk had fallen. What surprised him most wasn't her insight. It was how she made him feel seen in a way he never had before. It was both comforting and unfamiliar, like stepping into sunlight after too many years in shade. That night, he lay awake in his small bunkhouse room, staring at the ceiling. The desert outside was calm, the stars bright, but inside his chest, something new and fragile was beginning to grow. A curiosity, a pull, a quiet hope he didn't understand yet. He didn't know where it would lead. He didn't know what storms she carried or what storms he still avoided. But he knew one thing with certainty. Meeting Ayanna had shifted something inside him, and the shift felt permanent. Days passed quietly after Cole's second meeting with Ayanna, but the quiet didn't feel the same as before. It wasn't the calm emptiness he had grown used to. Now, a soft awareness lived inside him like a warm ember waiting for a breeze to grow into a steady flame. He went about his chores with the same strength and care as always, but his thoughts wandered more than usual. Drifting toward her voice, her steady eyes, and the way she spoke, as if every word carried its own gentle weight. He didn't expect their paths to cross again so soon. But life in the desert had its own timing. One Friday morning, the ranch owner asked Cole to check the northern grazing path. Some of the cattle had wandered a bit too far the previous week. They needed to make sure the trail markers were still in place. Cole saddled up his horse, grateful for the chance to be out on the quiet side of the ranch again. The sky was a soft blue, sun warm but not harsh, and the breeze carried the faint scent of sagebrush. Cole rode slowly, letting the rhythm of the horse calm his thoughts. When he reached the edge of the grazing path, he noticed something out of place, a small woven bag lying near the base of a rock. He slipped off his horse and picked it up carefully. The bag was beautifully made, decorated with simple patterns. It felt familiar in a way he couldn't quite explain, but he knew who it likely belonged to as he looked around. He spotted Ayanna in the distance, kneeling beside a group of low-growing plants. She seemed focused, gently brushing away soil from their roots, her hair falling across her shoulder like a dark ribbon. Cole felt a mixture of surprise and something like relief. He walked slowly toward her, not wanting to startle her, when she finally noticed him. She looked up calmly, her eyes warm with recognition. "Hello again, Cole." He held up the woven bag. "I think you dropped this." She stood and accepted it with a soft smile. "Thank you. It must have slipped while I was gathering herbs." Her fingers brushed his hand lightly as she took the bag, and the small contact made Cole's heart stir in a quiet but certain way. "What are you working on today?" he asked, hoping to linger a little longer. "Checking the roots of these plants," she replied. "Some of the younger ones were struggling after the storm. I came to make sure they're settling again." Cole nodded, watching her gentle movements. "You take good care of the land takes care of us," she said simply. "So we return the kindness." For a moment, they shared a peaceful silence. The wind whispered through the grasses. A bird called softly from a nearby tree. Then Ayanna looked at him with a thoughtful expression. "Can I ask you something, Cole?" "Of course. Do you ever feel like people expect too much from you?" she said. "Or expect something different than who you really are?" Her question caught him off guard. He glanced at the ground, tugging gently on his glove. "Most of my life," he admitted. "People look at me and think I'm only good for heavy work or simple tasks. They think size tells the whole story. And does it?" She asked softly. "No," he said. "But I don't always know how to show them who I really am." Ayanna folded her hands gently. "You don't have to show everyone. Just the ones who deserve to know." Cole looked up at her then, and something passed between them, quiet, warm, and honest. He didn't know what name to give it, but it felt real. She continued, "People talk about you. They say you're strong, hard-working, but they also say you're distant." "I'm not good with words," he said with a small shrug. "Never have been." "You don't need many words," she said. "Your presence speaks for you." Her voice was so calm, so certain, that Cole felt something inside him soften, a tightness he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. It was strange how easily she saw him, how gently she spoke truths he had never dared to say aloud. But he also noticed a shadow in her expression, something quiet and hidden, as if she carried her own unspoken worries. "You've been thinking about something too," he said carefully. "Something heavy." She looked down at the plants, brushing a leaf with her finger. "Yes." Cole waited patiently. He had learned that Ayanna never rushed her words. He respected that. After a moment, she said, "I came back to my community recently. My family welcomed me home, but things are not simple. I left many years ago to study and work. When I returned, I felt like a stranger walking familiar land." Cole understood more than she knew. "People don't always know how to accept change," he said. "It's more than that," she murmured. "There are expectations of me, hopes I can't fulfill anymore." Her voice grew softer, almost hesitant, and Cole felt a quiet worry rise in him. But he didn't push her. He simply said, "Whatever you're carrying, you don't have to carry it alone." Ayanna looked up, her eyes meeting his with a fragile honesty. "I cannot have children," she said gently. "My body cannot give life the way others expect it to. Some in my community don't say it, but I know they feel disappointment." Cole felt a small ache in his chest, not for himself, but for her. For the quiet pain she held so gracefully. "You're worth more than what anyone expects of you," he said softly. "More than what your body can or cannot do." Ayanna took a slow breath, as if letting his words settle inside her. For a moment she looked like she might speak again. But then she looked away, her expression tightening slightly. Cole stepped a little closer, but still kept enough space to make sure she felt comfortable. "Ayanna, I don't see you as less. Not even a little." She gave a quiet, grateful smile, though it carried sadness. "Thank you, Cole. But others may not see it that way. Some already whisper about me spending time with you." He frowned gently. "Why would that matter?" "People judge things they don't understand," she said. "They wonder why a woman like me would talk with a man like you. They make stories in their minds." Cole's heart sank a little. He had heard rumors about himself before he was used to the whispers, the assumptions. But he didn't want her to face that because of him. "If people talking ever makes things harder for you," he said quietly, "you don't have to keep meeting me out here." Ayanna looked at him with surprise, then shook her head. "That is not what I want." "Then what do you want?" he asked, his voice soft but steady. She hesitated only a moment. "I want honesty. I want peace. And—" she paused, taking a slow breath. "I like talking with you, Cole." Heat warmed his face, though he tried to hide it. "I like talking with you too." A gentle breeze passed between them, carrying with it a feeling of quiet understanding, but the world around them wasn't quiet for long as the sun moved lower in the sky. A group of ranch hands rode along the path, laughing and talking loudly. They spotted Cole immediately. One of them called out something playful, assuming Cole was just doing his usual chores. But when they noticed Ayanna standing beside him, the laughter dimmed into curious whispering. Cole felt his shoulders tense. He wasn't ashamed to be seen with her. He didn't like how people's eyes changed when they started forming stories. Ayanna seemed to notice the shift too. Her posture grew a little more guarded. When the ranch hands finally rode off, leaving only a cloud of dust behind them, she released a quiet sigh. "This is what I meant," she said softly. "People judge quickly." Cole nodded slowly. "Maybe, but their judgments don't define us." Ayanna looked at him with gratitude, but also with something like caution. "I need time, Cole. I need to think about what it means for us too." "Continue talking like this." "I understand," he said. And he meant it. She stepped back a little. "It's not you I doubt. It's the world around us." Cole felt a small ache, but he didn't let it show. "Take all the time you need." She nodded once, then gathered her bag, adjusting it over her shoulder. Before leaving, she looked at him, her eyes soft with something unspoken. "I will still see you again," she said quietly.
Just
"Let things unfold slowly." Then she turned and walked toward the ridge, her shawl lifting gently in the light afternoon breeze. Cole watched her go, feeling a mix of hope and worry. He didn't know what the world would say about them. He didn't know how much judgment she would face, or how much he would. But he knew one thing. Whatever was forming between them felt real, honest, and worth holding on to. The desert around him felt still, as if listening. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply, grounding himself. He wasn't afraid of what others said. He was only afraid that she would push him away because of them. But her last words echoed in him like a quiet promise. She would still see him again, and that was enough to keep hope alive. The days that followed were quiet but not empty. Cole went about his work as he always did, feeding the horses, repairing fences, guiding cattle from one pasture to another, but something had shifted inside him. The conversations he had shared with Ayanna stayed with him. They felt like soft echoes in his heart, reminders of her gentle strength and the honesty they had exchanged. He didn't expect to see her right away, especially after she'd said she needed time. He respected that. He knew she carried worries heavier than her calm voice ever revealed. So he tried to be patient, even though a small part of him hoped she might appear over the ridge at any moment. But instead of seeing her, the land brought a different kind of surprise. One warm afternoon, the sky dimmed suddenly. Clouds gathered faster than anyone expected, and a strange heaviness filled the air. It wasn't the kind of storm that announced itself loudly. It crept in slow, quiet waves, darkening the desert while the wind stayed unnaturally still. By evening, a faint smell of smoke brushed the air at first. Cole thought maybe someone was burning wood at their home. But as he walked toward the barn, he saw a thin, long line of smoke drifting across the horizon, stretching from one side of the desert to the other. It wasn't close yet, but it wasn't far either. The ranch hands gathered together, exchanging uneasy glances. The ranch owner came out and said, "A brush fire started near the eastern ridge. The wind's light for now, but we need to stay alert." Cole felt a tightness in his chest. The eastern ridge wasn't far from Ayanna's community. He tried to stay calm. Fires in the desert didn't always spread quickly. Sometimes they burned out on their own. But this one crawled across dry brush, like a quiet warning. That night, Cole hardly slept. Whenever he closed his eyes, he pictured Ayanna's calm face. her gentle hands checking the plants, her thoughtful eyes looking into his. He couldn't shake the feeling that she might need help. The next morning, the smoke was thicker. Not dangerously close, but close enough that the sky wore a faint haze. The ranch owner sent some hands out to check the perimeter and make sure the cattle were safe. "Cole," said, "take your horse and check the north trail. Make sure no stray animals wandered that way during the night." "Yes," Sir Cole replied. He saddled his horse quickly. But instead of heading straight to the north trail, he rode southeast first toward the ridge. He knew he shouldn't go too close to the fire line, but he told himself he just wanted to check the wind direction. Deep down, though, he knew he was looking for something else. When he reached the top of the ridge, he saw small figures moving below people from Ayana's community, guiding animals to safer ground. They looked calm but hurried, focused on their tasks. Then he saw her. Ayana stood near a group of elders, speaking gently to them, helping them onto a small wagon. Her shawl blew softly in the wind, and the faint smoke made the air around her look hazy. Without thinking, Cole guided his horse down the slope. Ayana turned when she heard the hoofbeats. Her expression shifted from surprise to relief. "Cole," she said softly, "you shouldn't be so close to the fire." "I came to help," he said simply. "You don't have to," she replied, though her eyes told him she was grateful. "I want to," he said. She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face the way she always did, calmly, deeply, as if she could read the truth behind his words. Finally, she nodded. "Double quotes, then help me guide the last group," she said. Cole dismounted and tied his horse to a post. Together they helped move a small herd of goats toward a safer part of the land. They worked without rushing, but with steady purpose. Even with the smoke drifting above them, there was no paniconally determination. As they walked, Ayana glanced sideways at him. "You didn't have to come," she said quietly. "I know," Cole replied, "but I couldn't stay away knowing you were here." Ayana held his gaze for a moment. "You have a strong heart," she whispered. "Stronger than people understand." Cole felt warmth rise in him, not embarrassment, but something quieter, deeper. After an hour of guiding animals and helping families move belongings, the community gathered at a safe spot away from the ridge. The fire wasn't close enough to danger them yet, but it was close enough to make everyone cautious. Cole stood beside Ayana as she checked on her relatives. She moved with calm purpose, offering comfort and steady words. Cole admired her strength, not the loud kind, but the kind that held people together when their worry threatened to spill over. When her tasks were finally done, she returned to him and let out a slow breath. "Thank you for helping." "Anytime," he said. "I mean that." She sat on a smooth rock and motioned for him to join her. They both looked out at the hazy horizon, where the fire glowed faintly in the distance, but didn't advance. "It should die down by tonight," she said. "The wind is light." "We'll stay here until we're sure," Cole nodded. For a while they didn't speak. The desert felt strangely quiet, no birds, no wind. Only distant crackles from the fire's edge. Then, Ayana said, "When I told you about my condition, I was afraid you might see me differently." Cole turned to her, surprised. "I don't see you differently at all." "I know," she said softly. "And that frightens me sometimes." "Why?" he asked. "Because you see me with kindness," she replied. "And I'm not used to someone staying after hearing the things that make me feel less." Cole shook his head. "Ayana, none of that makes you less." She looked at him, her eyes deep with emotion she rarely allowed to surface. Some people see a woman who cannot give what they expect. They think it means she has less value, or that she cannot build a future with someone. "And what do you think?" he asked quietly. "I think a future is more than one thing," she said. "I think it's built on trust, care, and choosing each other even when the world whispers doubts." Cole's breath caught slightly. Her words felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Ayana," he said slowly, "I don't want a future that's built on expectations. I want one built on choice." Her eyes softened. "And you choose me?" "I do," he said, without hesitation. "And not because of what you can give or can't give, but because of who you are. She looked down for a moment, her hands folding gently over her shawl. When she looked back up, her eyes were bright in a way he had never seen before. Cole, she whispered. I choose you too. The simple words settled between them like warm light. They didn't need to say more right away. The desert around them felt calmer now, as if the land itself approved of their quiet truth. Later, as the sun began to set, the fire dimmed on the horizon. Families slowly returned home, checking their land and animals. Ayanna stayed beside Cole the entire time, walking with him as they helped people settle. When they reached the edge of her family's land, she stopped and faced him. What happens now? She asked, her voice gentle. Now, Cole said, we walk forward together. Slowly, if that's what you want. Quietly, if that feels safe. But together without letting the world decide for us. Ayanna breathed in softly. Together sounds right? She stepped closer, and Cole felt her place a hand lightly on his arm. It wasn't a bold gesture, but it was filled with meaning. A promise. A beginning. They stood there until the sky turned soft shades of orange and pink. Finally, Ayanna said, Thank you, Cole, for seeing me. For choosing me? He shook his head gently. No. Thank you for letting me, she smiled, quiet, warm, and full of something new. As Cole rode back to the ranch that evening, he looked over his shoulder and saw Ayanna still standing there, watching him go. She lifted a hand in a soft wave, and he lifted his hat in return. The desert felt different again, not empty. It's not lonely, but full of possibilities. He didn't know everything their future would bring. He didn't know how others would talk or what challenges they might face. But he knew one thing with steady certainty. They had chosen each other. Not because the world approved. Not because they fit any expected picture of a future. But because, in a quiet desert filled with storms and silence, they had found something true, and that was enough for both of them to hold on to, gently, honestly, and without fear.